Hello students, welcome to today's video lesson. Today we shall be reading the poem A Legend of the Northland by Phoebe Cary. This poem is a ballad, which is a song narrating a story in short stanzas. Ballads are a part of the folk culture and are passed on from generation to generation through oral recitation or narration. Before we begin with the poem, let us hear a little about our poet, Phoebe Cary. Phoebe Cary was an American poet born on September 4th, 1824 in Ohio near Cincinnati. Her older sister, Alice Cary, was also a well-known poet. The sisters co-published a number of collections of poems together. Some of their famous works include Poems of Alice and Phoebe Cary, Poems and Parodies, Poems of Faith, Hope and Love. Let us now begin with the poem. A Legend of the Northland. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few, and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through, where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bear's cubs in their funny furry clothes. They tell them a curious story. I don't believe it is true, and yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. In the first two stanzas, the poet talks about the place which is the origin of the legend. The place is not specified, but the region is the Northland, which comprises of the countries closest to the North Pole. This region lies in the frigid zone of the earth and receives extremely slanting sun rays. Hence, both the duration of the daylight hours and the temperature are very limited. Sledges pulled by reindeers are the most common form of transport in the snow-covered lands. He also describes the dressing of the young children in their funny furry clothes. The poet narrates how the parents and elders of the Northland region tell the young children an interesting and curious story. She believes that the story is fictional, but the story offers a good lesson to be learned. Moving on to the next stanzas. Once when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching, just as he did, he came to the door of a cottage in travelling round the earth, where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. Saint Peter was one of the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ, who spent his life preaching. Apostles were the 12 primary disciples of Jesus Christ who helped spread his teachings. He is traditionally counted as the first bishop of Rome or the Pope. Preaching his way around the world, Saint Peter reached the doorstep of a cottage where a woman was baking cakes. Being tired and hungry after the entire day, he requested her for a piece of cake. Let us go over the next few stanzas of the poem. So she made a very little cake, but as it baking lay, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. Therefore she needed another, and still a smaller one, but it looked when she turned it over as large as the first had done. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat and baked it thin as a wafer, but she couldn't part with that. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat them of myself are yet too large to give away, so she put them on the shelf. We notice how the woman was not only extremely selfish, but also very miserly. Moreover, she had very poor skills of hospitality. Not only did she refuse to give the cakes from her store, on her third attempt she baked him a very thin cake which resembled a wafer. Highlighting her greedy nature, she confesses that the cakes seem too small when she has it herself, but when they had to be given to someone, she felt they were too big. Then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint. And surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. And he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form, to have both food and shelter and fire to keep you warm. Now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get your scanty food by boring and boring and boring all day in the hard, dry wood." The selfish, greedy behavior of the woman angered Saint Peter, and he cursed her. He said that she was undeserving of the comfort and the resources of the human form she lived in. Saint Peter cursed the woman that she would henceforth live the life of a bird, boring through the hardwood all day. After a hard day's work, a woodpecker gets very little amount of food. Then up she went through the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed to a bird. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same, but all the rest of her clothes were burned, black as a coal in the flame. And every country schoolboy has seen her in the wood, where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring and boring for food. The woman immediately went up the chimney and came out as a little woodpecker. She was changed into a bird, following the effects of the curse. The only reminder of a human form was the scarlet cap on her head that remained as a natural physical characteristic of the woodpecker. She remains a bird till today and is often spotted by school children. The elders use her story as a lesson against selfishness and greed. With that, we come to the end of this poem and today's video lesson. See you next in our recap and question and answer videos.